Um, so I'd like to introduce our session. My name is Lynn Heidewell. I am facilitating an oral history with Patrick Benegren for the Postal Workwear Oral History Project. Today's date is October 13, 2023, and we're doing this interview remotely using the online program Zoom. This interview will be available for public access through the Smithsonian's National Postal Museum. And we're going to start with a discussion of your background, and then we'll talk about your experience with postal workwear, in particular your uniform. So Patrick, please tell me your current job title and where do you work?
Well, good morning, Lynn. I have been with the Postal Service since July of 2000. So just over 23 years as a city letter carrier. And yeah, it's been an interesting ride, I'll put it that way, throughout those 23 years. But being a city letter carrier, it's an interesting connection with the community. And just being in uniform, number one, helps make that connection directly from the general public to the Postal Service.
And do you feel that when you put the uniform on every day, and is it conscious sometimes?
I do believe it is conscious. It is a general awareness that historically people have just been accustomed to over time, generation after generation. They see their letter carrier approaching their mailbox, whether it be by foot, by vehicle, but we're recognizable in the sense that there's a reassurance in some ways for a lot of individuals out there in the communities that we might be the only contact that they have on a given day. And it's based on the uniform, number one, because they recognize that they see us, and they see us as the face of the Postal Service.
And does that come kind of on the job? Do you sort of did you come to realize that pretty early on? How is this something that you've noticed over the years?
Yeah, it's kind of evolved, I think, early on, and even dating back generations of letter carriers. It was really more so a core fabric of society, and it still is today, no doubt about it. But like anything in life, things change and evolve. And same with the Postal Service, maybe same with the general public, how they use the Postal Service. And so that maybe that twinkle in the eye, or whatever it might be, by maybe someone who's elderly and looking for someone to just have that personal contact with, or a young child for that matter, who doesn't know any different, and yet sees this person approaching their house on a daily basis through a window, whatever it might be, and making that connection. So those things still hold true today, even though things have evolved and changed technologically and how people use the service, but that connection still exists, that personal connection.
And does putting on the uniform kind of prepare you for the day?
It does. I do believe that it provides you with a mindset of, okay, I'm dressed in a uniform representing something or someone. And in this sense, it's really both the Postal Service as a company, or I should say as a service organization, and really myself in that respect, to portray a certain image of oneself or what you're representing. And that's what I like to instill with my customers as I deliver to them each day, and have for the past 23 years. And I would hope that's the same for most postal employees that are wearing a uniform as well, that they first recognize and then understand the significance involved in what we're doing. We're not just out there walking around and enjoying the weather. And well, sometimes it's a little different, of course. But the point being, we're out there to provide a service, and in a uniform that allows us to be, again, recognizable, and kind of a focal point of a reminder of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
And is that is that something that's instilled from maybe sort of colleagues? Is it, where does that come from, that sense of service? Where have you developed, how have you developed that sense of service?
Yeah, I think for myself, a sense of service was more of an upbringing and past experiences, both personally and with maybe other jobs as well. But I think, just generally speaking, always intrigued by wanting to provide some type of benefit to the society around us, in whatever respect that is, um, personally, professionally, just make things a little bit better, a little bit brighter, uh, for somebody else out there. Um, I think that goes a long way.
So being a member of the community and contributing to it, can you talk a little bit about what your route is like today, and everything from, you know, what is it like working that route, but also that those interactions that you've kind of spoken with about with the customers?
Yeah, it's interesting because I recently um, selected or rebid on another route that I used to have on a route. And in Green Bay, Wisconsin, we have about 80 city routes, and throughout my career, I've kind of bounced around a little bit. I like to try different things out, and but I've come to find a certain community, and adjacent to Green Bay, and a lot of it's a nicer area. It's along the river, so it has a lot of businesses that I go into. So say the first third of the route are businesses. So there'll be that more professional connection that you're making with business owners, doctors, lawyers, people all walks of life as far as in the business community, and then having that sense of representation to them on how they can better utilize the postal service in some ways, just to help them from a business perspective, and have been successful in doing that, assisting some business customers in the past. And so that makes you feel good because you're helping them, their bottom line. Obviously, they're helping the postal service if they're providing more revenue to us as well. So that's a good thing. Um, and then the residential area as well. It's, I guess, would be considered upper middle class, maybe upper class in some of the areas, some nicer homes, and so the neighborhood is nice to deliver to. And then, of course, the scenery along the river provides a little bit more something to look at throughout the day, other than just driving up and down a street or walking up and down a street. And so I was on the route for 5 years, and then I selected a different route, and now I came back, and I do enjoy it. A lot of the faces are the same. A lot of the people, of course, are still there, and then, of course, there are some new ones that you have to make new connections with, and that's what makes it interesting. But in particular, I still recall, mind you, 2 years ago, 3, 4 years ago, some younger kids. Again, I bring them up because there always seemed to that attraction with the letter carrier, whether especially if they're driving up in a truck. There's nothing more exciting probably for a child than seeing somebody arrive at your house, and especially if they have a package. and they don't know any difference, so they might think it's for them. It could be for their dog, for that matter. But the point is, there's that excitement, and so they tend to gravitate towards that and want to accept the mail from the letter carrier. Even though mom and dad may not want it, but it's just something exciting, that connection with the kids as well. Yeah.
And you're recognizable by your uniform then, I suppose too, and as you mentioned, your truck as well. So is that something that you're often using a truck on your route? Is that part of your daily
Yes, yes. It's kind of a mix. I mentioned businesses, but I also have apartments. I have a fair amount of curbside delivery. But I also do get in and out of the truck quite a bit and going up to people's front porches, and so it's not just driving by all day long. It's getting out, and quite honestly, with even those stops where someone has a box at the end of the driveway, with the number of packages people order today, we're still getting out quite frequently. So there's always that connection as we're knocking on the door, ringing a doorbell, dropping a package off. Someone will oftentimes be home, and you'll have that initial greeting, and whether it be 30 seconds, whatever it is, but again, there's that connection.
And you were mentioning you've tried a couple of different routes over the time, and mentioned bids. Can you describe what it is like to bid on a route?
Yeah,
How
it's
the process works?
right. It's not very unique in the sense that it's just common based on seniority. So time served in the Postal Service once you become a full-time employee. And like everyone else, I started out probably getting one of the less desirable routes, if you will. It was a combination route. So you're doing some delivery and then you're collecting mail later in the day. And so a lot of us tend to recycle through those routes like that, and then you move along. So when a vacancy occurs, whether it be through retirement, someone else just moving on for whatever reason, just basic attrition, these openings come about, and then you place your written selection or bid based on your seniority, and then you're awarded that as such. Yeah.
And is that something that you just you keep abreast of and see what opportunities are, or how does that come about that you start to consider those changes?
Yeah, I think part of it goes back to, as you're a newer employee and you're learning the different areas of a city that you deliver to, different communities. Then there are certain ones, of course, that you'll be more attracted to, and for different reasons. I mean, we have some carriers, quite frankly, that they have been around 30 years, and they've been on their same walking route, the same neighborhood for 20 years or more. Whether it be just a creature of habit, not liking change, whatever it is, but that's them. And then you have others, maybe like myself, who like to bounce around a little bit and just try different things out, and like the variety of it until you actually get comfortable, where I am more so now. And so that kind of naturally happens just based on experience, what you'll gravitate towards. And then, of course, when those openings come about, in an office our size, people know when others are about to retire, and so there's anticipation that builds. There's nothing better than remembering back at that first opportunity to really select your own route, and take some ownership of it as well. We as letter carriers, we like to do that, even though they're not really quote unquote our routes. They're postal service routes, right? We're filling them, and but we do take personal ownership of them, and that builds that connection one-on-one and in the community as well.
And have you had other jobs within the Postal Service? Oh,
Yes, I have had other positions in the sense where I've been involved the last 10 plus years with the training program. So as new employees come aboard, I guess I'm one of the faces they get to see early on as within their orientation process, and as someone that will greet them and welcome them to the Postal Service, share some thoughts with them, some insights. Maybe even I tend to ask them right from the beginning, why did you come to the post office? What brought you here? And it's interesting some of the responses that come about, but by and large, welcome them in and explain some of the background behind what we do and why we do it.
so I'll follow up on that question and ask you, why did you join the Postal Service?
Why did I join the Postal Service? Let's see. Like many that I have spoken to over the years, I was kind of in a transition point. I was the year I turned 30 is when I started at the Postal Service, and was looking for different employment, kind of in between jobs a little bit. And I recall growing up, again, I revert back to my upbringing, my dad telling me early on, if you ever get in a spot or something where you're looking for work, just remember the Postal Service. And mind you, this was back in 2000, we were still taking the traditional uh, exam or test to get approved or accepted into the post office hiring process. And things have evolved and changed now, but so it's a little bit more study, work, what have you, preparation in advance. And but yeah, I was always reminded of that in the back of my head. Okay, um, that's a good job. It's a government job. They have a pension. They have good benefits. At least that's what I heard going into it. And then as we move along here, some 23 years later, all those things still hold true today.
And do you see yourself staying with the Postal Service through retirement?
Well, yes. Once you get 20 plus years in, um, you can kind of look towards the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, in that sense, from a retirement perspective. And so I've been looking in that direction a little bit more so the last few years, and now I'm kind of on that 5 to 7 year plan, if you will, and yeah, so looking forward to that part of it as well.
And when you are working with the trainees, do you impart some of that wisdom about your career path and so forth?
Absolutely, yeah. Not only as mostly as a letter carrier, of course, and the interactions with the public and stories that you'll share on things to uh, things to do where they can help them improve, things that they can avoid doing, especially when you're out in the elements, the weather elements, things like that. Um, but yeah, firsthand experience is crucial and vital to share with those that are learning, that are brand new, because they don't know any different. And one of the worst habits that someone can get into is learning bad habits on day one. And if they learn good habits, that will help prolong their career, 20, 30 years, whatever that duration of time is.
Is part of the training talking about the uniform and how to wear it, how to get one, how to get
Mhm.
pieces for it?
Yeah, that's interesting because during this orientation, this is literally day one as they're coming into the post office and they're sitting on Zoom calls and all this stuff that's going on. And then here comes this letter carrier and introducing himself and sharing some insights. And naturally they're dressed like you are, just as they would be, and coming from the public. And so that's obviously one of the questions, concerns right from day one. So we do talk about that a little bit, and it's more in depth throughout the training program. But I do share some things right from the beginning because I am in uniform, so I can reference what I'm wearing. Like today, I'm wearing this little lightweight sweater, which comes in handy great in the fall time and the spring when it's a little cooler out. And then, a nice little polo shirt underneath it, and so on and so forth, and footwear that we have, and just explain to them what might be more beneficial for them depending upon when they're being hired, number one, because they have to kind of look ahead. They have like a 90-day window of time, and then once they make it through that 90 days and they get hired, then they get a uniform allowance. And so, which we get one annually. The Saints about $500. And so they have to kind of plan ahead based on the time of year. So like now, if someone's getting hired, winter's coming up. And so once they make it through those 90 days, they're going to be ordering things that they need for the winter months. And so there's some thought process that goes into it as well.
So how does the allowance work? Is it reimbursement? How does a letter carrier go about buying uniform
Mhm.
pieces with the allowance?
Yeah. If we look back in history, even dating back up until I believe 1955, letter carriers in that point in time had to pay for things out of their own pocket. And so it wasn't until later after that that as the post office department at that time, we were attached to the federal government. So they wanted all their carriers at that time to look better, to look uniform in that sense. And so that's when they started providing stipends and so forth. And then over time, it's evolved and changed, whereas now it's built into and it's negotiated between the NALC and the Postal Service for an annual uniform allowance. And so as a new employee, they get a certain dollar amount. And then but they're a little different because they get a piece of paper. So they get basically a voucher that's worth $500. And then they have to go and spend that voucher with a uniform company selected by the Postal Service. And then for myself and the career employees, they give us a Visa card. So we have a credit card, and we have our allotment that is downloaded on there that we can use annually. Ironically, today is October 13th. So that is my anniversary date on my uniform allowance card. I kid you not. And so I can order new uniforms starting today with my full allowance for the next upcoming season.
Have you thought about what you might order this season?
Yeah, well, naturally, every year, if you're going to do a good amount of walking. I don't care if you're on a traditional walking route or if you're on a business route, whatever it is, you're still wearing the tread off the shoes, and you're putting out a lot of steps. And so usually there's always a pair of shoes every year of some kind, or um, whether it be shoes, boots, whatever it might be. And then you're probably going to need to upgrade a couple shirts, maybe a pair of shorts, pants, whatever it is. And then you just kind of fill in the spaces there as needed. Yes, these sweaters are nice, but they don't, last forever. The zipper might break, or they might start to shred a little bit or tear. So you have to improve the workwear as you move along.
Are there any that are a little bit harder to maintain and so forth? Like you were just mentioning shred and tear or so forth. Is there special laundering for any of your pieces?
Well, the materials obviously with, like, for example, this sweater right here, it's starting to fray on
Around the
the
cuff,
edge right
yeah.
there. Yeah. So the material is different than the shirt underneath. And so based on that, whether it's being cotton or some other fabric, that will help determine how long it's going to last. And so as far as treating them, uh, the traditional shirts are more like polyester in some respects, where um, that's one of the reasons we're hoping that things we get more options that change as far as the fabric. Because some of them over time are a little more difficult to maintain. I mean, if you're doing a walking route and you're carrying a mail bag or a satchel, you have a strap that goes across your shoulder, and just naturally over time, it's going to create a stain of where you're wearing that satchel, and so that sometimes that's harder to maintain as well. But you do the best you can with what you have. And again, you learn along the way on how to treat certain uniform items versus others, as far as keeping them clean and looking good.
Are any parts kind of customizable? I guess I'm seeing your sweater, you have the logo on there. Also your polo has the USPS logo as well. Does that come already attached? Are there things you have to do
Oh
yourself?
yeah. Oh no, everything comes with a postal logo insignia on it. Otherwise, it's not authentic.
Mhm.
And there's probably some knockoffs out there, believe it or not, knockoff companies that like to create their own, but they're not really the real thing. They're just trying to make a buck off of something that maybe they would like to be a postal uniform, but it's not a traditional uniform.
And speaking of the real thing, and as you mentioned before, the trust, are there any kind of rules about what to do with the uniforms after you're done with them? Can you just turn them over
Well,
to a thrift store, or what are you supposed to be doing with them?
that's a good question, and I'm not 100% certain on what the correct answer is. You may get different answers, but to give you an example, two items back here behind me, and they're both older jackets. The one lighter colored one, the grayish colored one, is a winter weight jacket, heavier weight. But as you can see, the logo is quite different. It says U.S. Mail on it, and the other one here, it says, I'll bring it a little bit closer.
Right.
It actually says letter carrier and has a
Mhm.
U.S. Mail logo on the sidearm. And for those who are old enough to remember the show Cheers, this would be pretty close, if not the exact one that the actor in that TV show had worn, uh, similar to that.
Great. And I see it has a zip up on that one too. So that seems
Yes,
have a zip. Yeah.
there's zip up on each
Yep.
one of them.
Yeah.
Today we have something maybe similar to that. It's called a bomber jacket.
Mhm.
And so the length would be like to your waist or your belt. And so it's a little bit higher up. And that has an insulating liner to it as well. But yeah, some of the items are more unique as you come across some of the carriers that have been around for quite some time. And and so that's what happens there too. To answer your question, oftentimes, and I've done this as well, as new employees are coming aboard, to share some of these items with them. I mean, like I said, we get an annual uniform allowance, so it's a use it or lose it proposition. And so, I want some my new employees to be comfortable out there, and so I tend to look after them a little bit, like others helped me out early on and provided me with some jackets or sweaters or shirts, whatever it is. So that tends to happen. Some people probably don't want any of it, so they'll leave it all at the post office and help yourself. Others might be a little bit more sentimental about it and might want to maintain or hold on to some of those memories as well, moving forward in retirement.
Yeah, and like the two pieces you told me before we started recording, that those were from a retired postal employee who had given those to
Yeah,
me. So
yeah. So he would be on the other end of the spectrum where he has more of that personal connection. He wants to hold on to it and a lot of pride in the work that he did over his career. And so, yeah, he still has them at home.
and those two uniforms that the one is a lighter weight, so and the other one would be the winter weight.
Correct, yes. Mhm.
And would you, is your winter weight coat anything like that, or is it quite different these days, or?
Actually, they are quite similar in the design of them, where they're longer in the body, so they hang down below the waistline a little bit. They're a little bulkier, the material, of course. Usually wind and water resistant to varying degrees, of course. And then they're insulated. This one has a hood attached to it. Pockets are obviously a big thing for us because we hold on to the different things and equipment, and sometimes they're a good place to keep the hand warmers, um, especially in the colder months out of the year.
Oh, the hand warmers, are those the little chemical packets that keep you warm, or?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, hand and toe warmers, believe it or not. Yes, up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, we definitely need those.
yeah.
And it's yeah, you certainly you learn how to dress yourself, and you learn how to adapt, whether you like it or not, to the weather. Either your way of adapting is not liking it and you're going to suffer, or you're going to adapt by learning how to properly dress yourself for the elements. And the only way you can do that is through experience of doing it yourself, or experiences from someone else that are sharing it with you.
Have you ever had to go grab another piece, or like during the day, or like?
Oh, absolutely, all the time. I'm not, I mean, the weather is different everywhere, right? But spring and fall in Wisconsin, the weather can fluctuate, whereas early morning it can be raining. Maybe an hour later it can be sunny out, and then again in the afternoon it'll be raining again. So yeah, you do. Um, Again, I go back learning from experience, the hard way. When you don't have something or you're not prepared, then you tend to pay more attention to the weather forecast the following day, and moving forward. So yeah, you can be changing out multiple times throughout the day.
And anything for prepare you for like the darker hours of winter and so forth? Are there reflective strips, or?
There are, in fact, this would be one of our newer jackets. It's a kind of a medium weight. It's a fleece jacket, and as you can kind of see, it's a shinier bottom here, and then it has
Mhm.
material up on top. So this is also very nice for this time of year, and it gets a little bit cooler out. And it can be layered though, so it's a part of it, like a three jacket system, and
Do
so you can.
they zip in the
Yep,
parts?
exactly. So like this
Mhm.
can zip into like a larger, heavier weight jacket, or it can zip into like a rain jacket.
Mhm.
So it's a couple different layers that you can utilize, and depending upon where you deliver and the time of year. So it's really nice in that respect. Um,
Yeah, and the stripe is that's a reflective material, and that stripe sort of
Correct, yes.
yeah, just above your waist, I guess it looks like on that.
Yeah, and then there are actually uh, like wind or rain pants that
Mhm.
match and have the same striping on
Mhm.
there as well. So that helps as far as when it gets a little bit later in the day and darker out. You have that reflective material for safety, obviously, and just being more visible out there. Other than that, if it's a bright moon, you can have very good moonlight. Um, a lot of the newer carriers now will be supplied with a headlamp, and so because of the later times, and here, honestly, as I'm looking outside into the cloudy, overcast skies, I'm reminded of um, this time of year, and maybe a month from now, 4:30 in the afternoon, it starts getting dark out, and so many of us are still out there delivering. And so, yeah, safety is certainly a big part what we do, and then the uniform and how it plays into that as well, to keep us more visible and safe as we're out there in the later part of the day.
Has that changed any part of the uniform in terms of safety over the 20 years of your career? Have there been additions to it, or?
Yes, there has been. Just from a pure safety standpoint, I like to refer to them as add-ons. I mentioned the headlamp. Another one would be footwear. So on the snow and the ice, up here they provide us with like cleats or little strap-on um, footwear that we can walk on ice a little bit more comfortably, a little bit safer, but it's still important to recognize and know that someone should not become too reliant on them as well. Sometimes there's a false sense of, okay, I have this footwear on and now I can just uh, run through the ice and the snow. Well, it doesn't always work that way. Um, you still have to be mindful of what you're doing and how you're doing it out there in the elements.
Is that something that you've ever had to help people with, or do people know any trainees who are not used to the area, not used to the weather that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, not everyone has resided here their entire life. They didn't grow up here. And so you have a lot of people that have come from different parts of the country. And and so again, you have to teach them. You have to share with them how to walk really on some of these surfaces, even with the proper footwear on, and how to do that appropriately. How to walk up and down steps on a porch, uh, especially if they're wooden painted porch steps, they can get pretty slippery in when they're wet, whether it be rain or snow. And so just a matter of going about it the correct way, and learning along the way. And most of us, we're going to learn the hard way, myself included. I unfortunately have fallen my fair share, and once you learn from that, then you can adjust um, on how you go about your day. Yeah.
And in a similar vein, but different, we've been asking in the oral history interviews about the COVID pandemic and the equipment that was introduced during that time. Was that something that was adopted for letter carriers and throughout the Postal Service for personally protective equipment?
Yeah, like, I mean, a lot of places that were still open and functioning, um, especially during the initial early on in 2020, um, when it became more apparent that it was, worldwide, and all the orders were out there for sheltering in place, and but we were considered an essential employer. So every single day we were still doing our jobs, and we were still providing that service, which provided a greater sense, I believe, of why we exist in what we do. Here, maybe yourself or others were at home and taking care of themselves or their families, and yet they still had to go about trying to live their daily lives, and yet they couldn't go to a store. So what do? They hop on their computer or their phone, and they order what they need, and so somebody has to bring that to them, and oftentimes it was us. And so again, that sense of connection was built on even more so and ingrained even more so in society at that point in time. And it's like that with, I think, any crisis of that magnitude. Um, whomever is out there trying to better the life of someone else in that sense, and that was our role, as far as providing goods and services through the mail. as people were trying to stay safe at home.
Did any of your customers remark about the events and particularly as they related to you as part of the Postal Service?
Yeah, no, I remember getting messages of thanks and appreciation, and I'm sure many others have as well, and really deservedly so, because in some respects we're no different than anyone else. Some of us probably wanted to shelter in place at home too, but we had a job to do, and so by and large, we did it, and we did it very successfully. Again, because we knew the significance behind it, the importance of it. Even though maybe the average employee carrier just goes about their daily grind and collects their paycheck, and maybe that's their mindset to get through the day. But I think when you maybe at the end of the day you get home, you sit down and you reflect a little bit on what you're doing, why you're doing it, that's when you can really understand more fully the significance of what we do and what we provide.
Have there been any other say particular periods of change or an event that has really affected particularly maybe your local community, your route, that you can recall?
Well, I think from a big picture standpoint, mentioned COVID, but whenever there's civil unrest, I mean, we've had different situations pop up in society. I don't know how many times in the past 5 to 10 years, more so. And again, since we're out there in communities trying to do our jobs, we can often be put into situations we don't want to be in. And that's in that sense, it's very troubling. We've been dealing with that more so in a different respect lately, just in a certain segment of society that doesn't look or value their postal employee as much as maybe their parents, their grandparents did prior in other generations, and that's sad to see, that degrading part of it, and whether it be just again with the civil unrest part of it and getting caught up in maybe a situation, or just in general as things evolve and change over time, and how maybe the uniform doesn't translate like it used to years ago. And that's a real life situation that we're dealing with today, where many letter carriers, unfortunately, even though they're fully clothed in uniform, have to deal with that on a daily basis, based on where they deliver, and it shouldn't be that way, quite frankly. There should be better protections in place for postal employees providing a service to the public. It's that simple.
And do you talk about that amongst yourselves about the situation?
We do, absolutely. In Green Bay, we haven't had many situations come about, but we've had a few situations pop up where as carriers we'd be put on notice by the postal management as different things arise in the community, and that might affect carriers in that particular area that deliver to a certain neighborhood or section of the city. And so then we take necessary precautions from there. So there's a system in place to help that. But in certain areas of the country, I mean, this is a daily occurrence. You know, where letter carriers are being, held up, or they're being robbed, mugged, what have you. Again, uniform or not, doesn't matter. And that, yeah, that's troubling.
And you're a member of the National Association of Letter Carriers, NALC.
Yes.
Are these topics of discussion within the association as well?
They're at the highest levels, and they've been ongoing for a long time. And that's really all that, not all of what we can do, but that's a big part of what we can do, is rely on our representatives to have these discussions with the Postal Service, with all the parties involved, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be those that would hold these individuals legally responsible, different things like that. So it's a cross section of a lot of different entities that are involved in hoping to better protect us in doing our jobs. And as I think back to when I started, I couldn't imagine that today, back then, of this transpiring and happening, because that's not how I grew up. That's not how I saw things, not how the lens that I saw it through, society. But this is where we are today. So we have to, again, just like the Postal Service has over time, learn to adapt and evolve, and so do we as letter carriers in uniform, have to do that as well.
Have anybody from the public sort of come to you for assistance too, seeing you in the uniform and
Oh, yeah.
Sort of going
Oh
back to
yeah.
the position of trust?
And I'm glad you asked that, because on the other end of the spectrum, it's not all doom and gloom. We do, again, going back to that connection, there's a lot of great things that take place throughout the country on a daily basis, just by the fact that we are everywhere. We are in every single community, every single day. And so whether we like it or not, we're going to see things, we're going to hear things. And some of it may be instinct, um, whereas it's not like someone's just trying to go out and be heroic. But again, it goes back to what I said earlier. It's about trying to do better and make something brighter for somebody else. And in this sense, I mean, if someone's in dire straits, a common one, it seems like, is somebody elderly would fall down, and whether it be in their backyard or in their house, the connection that we can directly make with them is because we're there as a regular carrier every single day. We're walking up to that porch step and we're putting mail in that mailbox. And if we know someone that resides there is older and they live by themselves, and we're that connection that they make, that face that they see every day, and we know that they normally pick their mail every day out of their mailbox, and then all of a sudden 2 days go by, 3 days go by, a week goes by.
Mm.
Well, hopefully it's not a week. Hopefully we're asking questions before that, but those scenarios take place, and that's where we can really have a positive effect on, hopefully, on the outcome in some cases, just by simply taking that extra step, looking at a window out of concern, talking to a neighbor, obviously contacting authorities to do a welfare check. I've done this more than once in my career, for elderly customers, and sometimes it was nothing. They just went out of town and they forgot to put their mail on hold, even though they normally do. Or sometimes it's been real, where there's been a real issue, and they needed medical care, things like that. So yeah, there are a lot of good things that happen out there as well, based on, again, us and the uniform, the visibility, the respect still in that regard, and the trust. I didn't use that word yet, trust. And that's a huge part of what we do, is people trust that we are going to not only deliver what is rightfully theirs, but not interfere with that as well. And then also trust that we're someone that they can rely on in the community in a time of need.
And does it, that's really heady stuff. Everything that we've, I just, talk about, does it, and then that's in the back of your mind of your day-to-day kind of work.
It is,
Activities.
yeah, it is, because I deliberately, even though it's a more affluent neighborhood, it's still a cross section where you have, again, you have older residents that have been in their homes for a number of years, and then you have younger uh, married couples that are starting out with young kids that are moving into these neighborhoods, and so there are different elements all the time, and that's just the way that society is. We deal with the elements across the board, and whether it be the children, the adults, their pets, the unwanted animals that might come along the way throughout our days. We didn't talk about that yet, but
No. Now I'm curious. When the unwanted animals, do you have you had encounters, or other carriers have had encounters?
yeah, I've been fortunate, and I'll knock on some wood, that I have not been bitten by a dog. I've been approached many times, mostly out of curiosity, because they are dogs that I deliver to their homes, and so they would see me on a daily basis, but maybe they're behind a fence or inside, so they don't normally get that opportunity to greet me. So when they do, they like to do that. But there have been occasions, and I can remember early on, and this is again where a uniform can come into play, or the equipment that they give us safety wise, dog spray. We even have dog horns now, so the piercing noise helps to keep them away if they're unwanted. Obviously, our part of our uniform is our satchel, our mailbag, and so then that is used also as a defense system to help kind of put in between us and an unwanted animal, usually a dog, of course. And then that way can, hopefully prevent, or at least allow us a little bit more time to get away safely. And so, yeah, those elements are out there. No matter how well we plan ahead or prepare for it, certain things just come about.
The satchel, I'm curious about that. Is that something that you also have to purchase with the allowance, or are those issued, or?
Yeah, they are issued. They're considered a piece of equipment, a satchel. It's essential for what we do. Obviously, on a walking route, that's where all the mail and the small packages goes. We're walking. So that, I mentioned the dog spray, and that is essential as well as we're walking out there, moving along throughout the days.
And that's a lot of equipment, a lot of little and small equipment. What how do you handle all of the small pieces and the large pieces that you
Yeah,
have
they
during
do
the day?
have, like for example, our scanners that we have. They're handheld devices, probably not much different than a smartphone, size wise, and so then they have little holsters that they come with, and so they can go on your belt, so they can be right on your hip, or they can be attached the same way in a satchel. So you can put a holster inside your satchel and put your scanner inside there. You can, same with your dog spray, it has a little metal clip on it, so you can clip it on your belt, or you can clip it on your satchel. Clip it on the door in your vehicle as you're getting out of the vehicle. Then it's accessible to you. You have all these jackets that I mentioned, that have pockets in them, so those are useful. We even have different shirts that have, this is called has a pockets built in the front.
Oh, down low, like waist level pockets.
Correct. You
Into
put your keys in here, you can put dog spray in here, you can put whatever you need in here, pens, whatever it is. And these are pretty comfortable too, because you don't have to tuck them in at all. You can just wear them loosely. So
Right,
when
with this, so you can access those pockets too.
right,
Yeah.
and so then when it's maybe a little bit warmer out, you have a little bit more airflow to
Mhm.
also help you out in that respect. But yeah, so that's why it's important with the uniform to be able to accommodate some of these items.
Are there's more that you would like to see in the uniforms? Is there any piece that you have that you'd really love to change, or one that's
Mhm.
perfect for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Uh, Back in 2014, 15, I believe, Green Bay, we were part of a uniform pilot test, and for winter wear or winter gear, and naturally, of course, they picked us for that. But so well, we have the weather for it, so we understand. But it was unique and interesting because what they did is they had three different companies, three or four, and different manufacturers, and they provided different materials and different types of uniforms, whether it be, like I said, pockets. You could on your pants, you could have like cargo pants, or you could have just a different style of a jacket to wear with different pockets and different locations, and that was very very interesting to go through because it allowed us to really try these out as we're working and see what was functional, what looked good, what was useful, and some were better than others, and so that all that information was tracked and and shared with the Postal Service through the NALC and a private company. And I think some of those results are finally coming to fruition with the last couple of years. Like I said, mentioned the shirt I'm wearing today. It's a little different, lighter weight material for a polo shirt versus the old like cotton, polyester, whatever type of. So it's a little bit more um, wicking as far as material. It's a little bit more, has more breathability, and so for a letter carrier, that's very important for us as we go about our day. Just that comfort level. There's so many better materials out there today, and just what anyone can purchase. And so why shouldn't we have those as well? So it's just a matter of getting to that point, and hopefully um, it will move quicker than what it has. Um, but yeah, like I said, this time of year I really like the fleece jacket. I think that's because it's heavy enough to block some of the wind, and you can layer up underneath it. And a lot of the carriers like the rain pants that come with it because they're kind of wind rain pants, but they're a little bit more comfortable. So you can still, I mean, heck, you could wear, if it's a day where it's still in the 50s here in Wisconsin, many of us are wearing shorts. Obviously, if it's raining out, well, you could have your shorts on underneath your rain pants. If it gets nicer out during the day, take off the rain pants, you got your shorts on. So there's different ways that you can layer up and plan ahead and accordingly for the weather in that regard.
And you mentioned also looking good with in terms of when you're trying out some of the pilot items
Mhm.
look good. Is that is there a sense of style as well in terms of pieces that you pick out, or
Well, I think
colleagues who do?
there probably is naturally for
Yeah.
some people more than others, just wanting to look nice and look good, and I think that is important as well. Again, it helps with confidence, self-confidence, and being out there in the community and representing yourself in a better way. Looking good, feeling good, all those different slogans that come with it. And I think that does go a long way in projecting a certain image, the brand awareness for the Postal Service. That's what they're going after as far as the look of the uniform. And I think so that can be tied together. Comfort for the employees and then also the brand for the service itself. And once we can kind of mesh the two together, and I think everyone's better off because of it.
Um, and thinking of the brand awareness, have there been any changes during your career of, like, say, a special promotional moment or something like that, or I think you came in after all the logo changed.
Mhm.
Have you noticed any differences in sort of how the brand is projected through the uniforms and your options for your uniform?
The only thing that really stands out to me is the inclusion of letter carriers in uniform for advertisements. Um, Whether mostly leading up to the holiday season and what we call our peak season, which kind of has evolved from December, November, even into October now in some respects. But you'll see these advertisements on TV, on social media, whatever it is, and so they involve letter carriers in uniform. So I think that's a connection right there that obviously didn't exist when I first started. Is just the awareness of it and the image it portrays as we're making those deliveries.
And that
Oh,
old piece of the uniform that you have behind you has the name letter carrier on it on one of the patches, just about the pocket there. Do any of the current ones have that?
no,
No.
not,
Yeah,
no, I don't believe they do.
yeah. But they're in the
They
general
just,
image of the
yeah,
Postal
they
Service for
just as
letter
have the logo on there, the
carrier.
eagle. Yeah, but other than that, yeah,
Yeah.
I should
Amazing.
kind of bring that one back in some style. That'd
Yeah,
be,
it's a great piece. And I think one of the other old ones sort of went above the patch when it was a round patch as well. It said letter carriers. But
oh, sure, yeah.
and I had mentioned before, you you work with the National Association of Letter Carriers, and can you tell us a little bit about your work with the association and how you got
Oh, sure.
started?
Yeah, yeah. And my involvement really pretty much started from day one, and I was intrigued by the fact of representation, providing representation for others. Again, that goes back to my upbringing as far as wanting to stand up and do the right thing, and to be a voice in some respects, to kind of push back a little when it is necessary. And so that's what kind of springboarded me into um, getting involved with the NALC early on. And then has evolved, of course, over time to various levels, various trainings, if you will, on a national level. And now today, for last, since 2014, I've held the position of local branch president here in Green Bay. And then we represent 9 other communities surrounding Green Bay, so a total of 10 cities. And so the involvement there, again, but it's also led to other opportunities, other learning opportunities, which I believe are important too. As you move along um, through life in general, things can tend to get a little stagnant, um, or you can choose to maybe um, learn a few extra things along the way and be willing to do so. And that's what I've done and been able to do through the association as well, in different respects.
Um, does the association have an identity in branding? Is it that you also can you wear any of that on your daily wear, or is that totally separate? It's not part of.
Well, we do have, like for example, some of the new employees, when they're within their first 90 days, they don't receive a clothing allowance until after they get hired on. So they will have to wear their own clothing. And once somebody signs in it as a member of the NALC, then they're mailed a t-shirt, an ALC t-shirt. And so I've seen those worn as carriers are delivering mail in the office, out on the street. And so it's another level of sense of pride there, I believe, as well, in supporting what we do and why we do it. And yeah, so, but by and large, I mean, the Postal Service in general likes to have their employees in uniform, which I agree with. And quite frankly, I tend to believe that all postal employees, if you're out in the public or in the public view, you should be uniformed in some way, at least a uniform shirt. And our brethren and sisterin on the rural side, well, I'm not quite sure how they got away with it for so long, but I think that might do a lot to help with brand awareness if the Postal Service decided to require them to be in uniform as well of some degree. I think that would be a good thing.
And does that do you notice a difference in within sort of the office back at the post office, those who are in uniform and not, are there is there just a difference in how that's
There can be,
yeah.
there can be with the interoffice politics or just maybe the view of and I think it really holds true. If I'm, well, I live in an area that has a rural carrier versus a city letter carrier. So it's someone not in uniform versus uniform. And I just think it just generally speaking, it gives a better appearance overall. If you're driving in a postal vehicle, you should look the part. And I think it just goes together hand in hand. And I think in that regard, it would be more beneficial than it is today and has been for a long time. Just from the visibility aspect of things. Because there's a lot of part of the country that they might even be delivering it in their own personal vehicle. Yeah, but again, just from a business perspective, why would you not want your employee better represent you in that regard?
Right, but like you were talking about the brand identity earlier,
Exactly.
advertising.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have just a couple more questions of the, do you have a favorite at the moment of what you like to wear? I know you're in a changing season of the autumn, but
We are.
yeah.
I am a fan of the new, again, that's why I'm wearing it today, the new polo shirt versus the older polo shirt. And even though it has only one pocket here versus not having the larger pockets, it's still, it's more comfortable. To me, it's more functional just because of the comfort level. And it can be worn, obviously, just by itself when it's warmer out, or I have a little undershirt on it today with a sweater. And so if I was out delivering today, this is what I'd be wearing. Minus the sweater, I'd have a light windbreaker on to repel some of the rain. But this is how I'd be dressed today, and it's in the 50s, overcast, and then as we move along, that's when the fleece jacket will come out, and then after that, the other heavier weight jacket, and so on and so forth, and go from there as we move along through the weather.
And is there any piece that you wish you had not spent your allowance on, or not the wisest decision, or just didn't work?
Yeah, some of the rain jackets, some of the older ones, I believe, they can get really warm inside. If it's not, I mean, if it's 40 degrees out and it's raining all day long, you're probably going to need a rain jacket on because it's not very comfortable once you get cold and wet all day long for 6 hours or however long you're on the street. But they can be warm if they're not ventilated well enough. And so it's important to, maybe with the newer materials and the newer quality of these items, these jackets, that they provide some type of ventilation as well. So you're not overheating while you're out there delivering in the rain, for example.
And is there anything with the uniforms that you'd mentioned about trying the pilot programs and the materials
Mhm.
and the scanners, which is a recent equipment from the last 20 years or so? Is there anything else in the uniform that you see needs to adapt with really that changing nature of what's in the mail, from letters to packages and so forth? Or so do you have the flexibility and accommodation to handle, you know, everything from letters to the periodicals,
Yeah, yeah.
packages?
For example, some of the newer heavier weight jacket or rain jacket has big pockets on the outside. So in the wintertime, you have all these layers on, and you have this longer jacket that goes beyond your waist. Well, if now it's not bad because I can access my scanner from its holster on my waist. But if I have a jacket that's longer, maybe 6, 8, 12 inches longer below my belt, it's going to be harder to access that on a regular basis when you need it all day long. And so that's where the pockets up front are very useful and user friendly, whereas you can put that scanner in the front pocket and then you just have access through it all day long, just right from the pocket in front of you, as one example.
What gets scanned? I'm not sure that I
Yeah,
yeah.
a lot of things today. For example, in pretty much every item that would be considered a package, whether it be a small package or even something that is magazine size, but it goes in an envelope. So the vast majority of those items today come through the system with a barcode attached to them. And it's just a tracking label to show in transit where that item is. Why? Because naturally people want to pay attention to their goods as they order them through the system when they're going to receive them. So that's why not only the Postal Service, private companies do this as well, and the tracking of it and the visibility. So then individuals at home can watch it along the way as it's going through the system, and then um, virtually every package that comes through today in a box has a barcode on it, tracking label as well. So everything like that is going to get scanned multiple times throughout the day at different points of entry and all the way up to delivering it. And then also there are letters, of course, that can have barcodes on them. If you send out a certified letter, for example, or if you send something out express mail overnight. So there's different add-on services that the post office offers for different reasons. And so they're going to need a little bit more um, insurance added to them because they're more valuable in some respects. So then people want to be reassured that they're getting delivered at a certain time and location. But even letters, for that matter, we have machines that automatically sort the majority of our letter mail, and so they imprint a barcode on the bottom of the letter. And so just occasionally through time, the Postal Service will want to monitor how long it takes in transit from point A to point B to point C, and they'll do that. And so sometimes we'll have to actually scan this barcode that's imprinted on there as we deliver it. And so it allows us some information just to managing and better understand how long a piece of mail it takes to get through the system.
And thinking about that, all that through the day, are there different kind of time management that you do have to be aware of as a letter carrier, pacing yourself through a day?
Well, there is no established set pace. I mean, because
Mm.
we're all physically made different. Some have shorter legs, some have longer legs. I mean, that's just the way it is. But by and large, we still want to try and be efficient in how we go about our day. Um, Mind you, that we're being safe. We're trying to be as accurate as possible. And of course, we're providing that service. If we can cover all those three things first, I think early on I mentioned about learning good habits right from day one as a new employee. And that's why I bring that up, because if you can learn good habits from day one, the nature of the job that we do is just a matter of repetition. Every single day, hundreds of times a day, we're just doing a repetitive motion over and over and over again. So if you're learning the good habits, you are naturally going to become or should become more efficient in doing it the right way moving forward in your career. And so, yeah,
I think that's
there you go.
yeah, I think that's a great message to end on, but I'll ask one more question. If there's any additional topics or experiences you wish to share in the interview, you've done a nice brought it back to the beginning.
You did. You brought it back to the beginning. Yeah. A little full circle moment. As you fast forward, rewind sort of thing. It's always interesting to take the introspective look at how things have evolved, how things have changed, good, bad, and different, and how, interestingly enough, how they're reflective of society in general. Just based on the simple fact of postal service is ingrained in the fabric of society since what, late 1800s, 1700s, whatever it was, whenever we were founded a long time ago. But the simple fact is we remain here today to provide a service. And that's ultimately why we exist. Plain and simple.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for the interview, Patrick. And it was very enlightening. So I'll conclude our recording of the oral history for now.
Thank you very much.